What is the role of religion in our ever-changing world? From the NewsChannel 5 network, this is Issues of Faith.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Issues of Faith. Glad you are with us. It is Wednesday, June 3rd. I like to say what day we are recording these now because the news changes so quickly. Of course, over the weekend, we had just terrible protests, and we've had just a very difficult time on top of the coronavirus and the pandemic. And so we want to talk about that, and we are very happy to have with us via Zoom, as we have been doing here lately, the Bishop of the Nashville Diocese, J. Mark Spalding. So Bishop Spalding, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Ben. It's good to be here with you.
We appreciate it, and you come in the midst of very difficult and troubling times. I want to talk about the unrest that we're seeing all across the country in a moment, but I'm also asking people who oversee large churches, or in your case, many different churches, about the coronavirus and kind of getting back into worship. And so where are you right now? You oversee 58 churches across Middle Tennessee. Where is the Nashville Diocese right now about going back to worship?
So we're taking a step-by-step process, and the governor and the mayor, they call them phases. We've called them steps, but we started back on May 18th, and we started the celebration of weekday masses, opening back up our churches to the public celebration of Mass. Now, our priests have been celebrating Mass all the way through this, but it wasn't in a public forum, and they were doing it individually or just with a couple of others. But starting on May 18th, daily Mass came in, and then that following weekend, I think it's 23rd, 24th, was the first full weekend we have been open to everybody. And it's happening slowly but surely. The priests are informing me, our pastors in the various parishes throughout Middle Tennessee are informing me that the crowds are not overwhelming. They're light, but growing in numbers day by day, but not overwhelmingly so. And that's all right, because what we've done in the diocese is we've continued all our virtual and social media outreach of Mass and the celebration of the various services that we have, so that if people are 65 and above, if they have medical issues in any way, shape, or form, or they just simply are anxious right now and don't feel they're up to coming to celebrating with others in this moment, we've asked them to stay home, and they're taking up our advice and counsel, which we've received not only from our civic leaders, but our health council have told us to be careful with things. So
what about communion? Are you still doing communion in the same way, or have you changed how you do communion in this time period right now?
That's an excellent question. We have changed the way because social distancing is required of the 6 foot. So people are placed in the pews with that 6 foot distancing, either as individuals or as families. And when they come forward to receive communion, they have to be in that 6 foot distancing. Likewise, we've asked them to all receive communion in the hand in which the priest or deacon will place that in their hand, basically getting closer in the hand and dropping it in, and trying to be as reverent as possible, but staying as in those circumstances of distance and not touching. So we work that step by step, but you are told to keep 6 feet apart. Our pastors have placed little lines, taped lines in their aisleways so that people know where to stand and when to come forward. And the ushers are helping make sure that goes in the best possible way.
How many of your churches have been touched by COVID-19? I know the West End, the beautiful church there, I believe reported a case, But with 58 churches, how many have been touched in some way by it, whether it's a member or staff member or even a priest? And how have you handled that?
Well, specifically, you're making reference to the cathedral, and so that was a staff member that was somehow infected with the virus. It wasn't so much through the celebration of Mass in that worship service, but outside of that, somehow he was in contact with someone that had the virus, and he was in contact with some of the staff members there at the cathedral. And so what they did is, after they had news of this, they informed the parish. The pastor there, Father Ed Steiner, informed the parish, and they put themselves in isolation for a couple of weeks on the advice of doctors. So we informed the parish, the pastor informed the parish, and then they've taken advice that comes from medical professionals. I think there's one other parish that somebody came to a graduation kind of blessing event, and they did the same thing. They just sent it out through internet and other forms of communication. This person was there. If you had any interaction with him or her, please know this is what the situation was, and take all due measures to protect your health and to get tested. I think the governor and the mayor and everybody right now is recommending that we get tested. I've done the test, and it's not one of the most pleasant things I've ever done in my life, but it's a worthy thing to do, and it's helped me go forward with encouraging others to get that test as well. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Let's go back to mid-March. Mid-March is when churches everywhere stopped having public worship. And I don't remember the exact date for the diocese. It might have been March 17th, but you all stopped having worship. And take us to the debate. Obviously now we realize how serious this was. How difficult a decision was that on March 17th? Were there voices that you were listening to that said, this is not the right decision, that we need to be together at this time, closing the church is the wrong decision? I guess take us back to the time that you decided to do it. How difficult was it, and what was some of the debate?
And you set the question up so well, because all of those points you just made about the challenge of the health situation itself, the spread of the virus, but also in the moment of trial and difficulty, how significant it is to have a faith life and to celebrate that and be with and for others. And so all of those concerns were brought to the table at that moment. But I just want to emphasize something that we've all experienced in this phenomenon, that every day it was moving so fast. For me, in this pandemic, a day feels like a week of events and decisions are being made, and a week feels like a month. So in those few days leading up to the 17th, we had conversation with our civic leaders, we had conversation with health professionals, and it kept moving. The CDC kept moving the line from like this group, and here's how you can work this with hand hygiene, and groups moved from 250 to 100 to 50. And really by the beginning of that week where we made the decision on the 17th, it had dropped down to 10. And when it dropped there, we knew we had to really address this. Now, the governor has been quite clear. Governor Lee has been quite clear that he never closed the churches. Other governors did clearly make the statement that they were using their authority and given to them to close churches. We never were closed like that, but we were, because of the circumstance around us, because of the advice and counsel of the governor's office, of the mayor's office, of health professionals, we made the decision then to suspend the public celebration of Mass. But all the way through this, even going back to March 17th, our churches have been open for people to come in for daily prayer. They've celebrated and been a part of what we call adoration, Blessed Sacrament. And also they could celebrate confessions under the requirement that they be in a place where air could circulate readily, and they themselves took on certain hygiene and other distancing requirements. But I'm going to go back to your point also in your question is the decision on March 17th was one of the most difficult ones I've ever had to make as bishop. Now, I say that now, and next year I might have a different crisis and a different concern in which I say it again. But it was challenging because part of a faith community is its gathering together as one. And to lose that part of who we are was difficult. And immediately people did write me and were concerned about this decision. But I felt for the common good to truly help bend the curve and to flatten the curve. At that time, it was needed. And I think that's proved to be true. It was needed at that time. We accomplished that task of bending and flattening the curve. But now that we've opened back up, we have to pay attention to what we're doing because really none of us want to go back to closing again.
And one more question before we go to break. We talked to somebody on this show who very eloquently said closing worship is difficult, but it's also an opportunity to show our love of neighbor, that it is the right thing to do in the midst of a pandemic, not to put people in a situation where they're infecting other people. It's a difficult decision, but it's the right thing to do. That's what he said, and I thought that was well said. We have seen this tension out there, and if you look, there are some churches who are defiant, might be the word, and that's certainly picked up on in the media, where they say, I'm not going to close, God will protect me, that kind of thing. And when you see that, what do you think? I mean, what is the message there? Are you concerned that taints other churches, or is that an appropriate sort of tone to take? I mean, when you see some of that tension out there and some of these things that are being said, what do you think?
Well, it's to do what we did and are doing is an act of charity toward others. It is at times to do all these things, a sacrifice of my own comfort, and there is a certain imposition on self, but it's for the greater good, the greater common good. And that person you're quoting said it so well. It is an act of kindness and care and concern for the other. And if we're disciples of Jesus Christ, remember, he gave his life for others. There's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And so these kind of sacrifices should be true to who we are as Christians so that we can protect others.
All right, we have to take a quick break. Then I want to ask about what we're seeing as far as some of the unrest around the country. It's really been heartbreaking. And I have a couple more questions about worshiping in this time of the coronavirus. Take a break. Be back right after this.